Well, welcome back. And today you are really going to enjoy the story, the testimony, and the powerful ministry of Pastor Tod. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Jane. I feel at home, literally. So it's a great name for the show because that's how you feel when you're here. And they're just such a sweet presence of the Lord, even in the studio right now. Yeah.
That is our prayer, is we want this to feel like home.
Yeah.
I actually got saved watching Christian television.
Oh, wow. Okay.
With Sheila Walsh.
Yeah.
I was watching the 700 Club.
Okay.
And then after this radical experience I had with the Lord,
Yes.
and I know you've had one of those many,
Yes,
but
yes.
one in particular that changed the course of your life.
Yes.
But when I had that experience, as soon as they came back from a break, she picked up the microphone and sang, "Jennifer, come home."
Jennifer, come home.
So,
Yeah.
hence the name of the show.
Yes. Well,
Come
that
home.
makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I've had experiences like that too, where on Christian television, when I was in the world and I was kind of flirting with God, or he began to kind of come into my life. He's amazing. I mean, the way that God just so lovingly guides you in, and he came after the one. I was a product. I was messed up in the world. I was in Hollywood. I was a child actor. I started partying at a young age. And I was on the road like so many of these other people have been down, where, it wouldn't have ended up well.
Yeah.
And then the Lord just so lovingly got a hold of my life and started opening up my eyes of understanding and just revealing himself to me. What's so crazy is in Hollywood, it was actually the darkness that started showing me that if there's darkness, if there's demonic stuff, there has to be light and life. And that's where I started seeking. And the Bible says, seek and you shall find, knock and the door shall be open. And so I always encourage people, because, I was just in a little online thing with an atheist that just happened to come on my page. And I'll tell you this, atheists, I always tell them they have to have more faith than me, because they believe things just came out of nowhere.
Right.
And so this gentleman started sharing all this quantum theory and all this stuff. And so I looked into it because I'm a researcher, and I said, I want to see what these people are talking about, So we look into this thing, and what it is actually is that they say that, nothing came from, something came from nothing, in other words. But here's the thing about it. There has to be an energy behind it. Even they admit it.
Yeah.
And so that energy is when God said, let there be light.
Yes.
And there was light. And so atheists don't even believe their own doctrine, their own beliefs, And so if you ever want to stump an atheist, just say, whenever in history did something come from nothing?
Right.
Out of nothing. And there's never, not
there's
one
not
time.
an answer.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, so that's what I started doing in Hollywood, is I started seeking. And, that's like, I call it the Pepsi challenge. Like, if you're going after God, he's going to reveal himself to you. And that's what happened. He revealed himself to me. And so I just kept going deeper and deeper. And I've been on this journey for, 27 years now or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm a woman, and a lot of my viewers are women. So they want the details of the story. Okay. So let's go back. You live in LA, your parents are in ministry, and you start being an actor.
Yeah.
And then you got to a point, start there. From the actor to the Hawaii, to the stabbing, to the dying, to the resurrection. I know. I love your story.
My dad was a macho Italian. He was like a vice president of a company.
My dad's name is Rocky.
Okay, so you get it.
I'm Italiano.
Coconato, last name, right? Yeah. So anyway, and so my mom and my grandparents got saved at a young age, and so that was kind of like my introduction. We were Catholic, but we didn't really go to church. We didn't really understand what was happening in the Catholic Church. We'd go, we'd stand up, we'd sit down.
Tradition.
Right, it was just tradition. There was no connection. But I did believe there was a God.
Sure.
And so my mom was like a stage mom at the time, and so she took me. I got a great agent in Hollywood. I was booking. I was a working actor at a young age. I was working around a lot of well-known people that you guys would know today. And, and so I was making it in Hollywood. This is success in the eyes of the world. And that went all the way to about 16 years old. And at this point, my mom had really engaged in the church, and she started going deeper, and she knew there was a calling on her life, which is a whole other story. And so I just told my mom, I said, I'm missing so much school. I want to have like a normal teenage life. And, there's like these stage teachers that would teach you, but, you're not in a classroom and interacting with young people. So she said, dude, if that's what you want.
And you're a people person.
I'm a people person, So I was on all these sets and everything. And so, I just told my mom, I don't want to do it anymore. Now I had made good money. I had a car at that point, 16 years old, you're a little bit of drive in California, so, but I never disengaged with the young Hollywood crowd.
Yeah.
And so I would have like two different sets of friends. I'd have my Valley friends. Anybody who knows LA, there's like the San Fernando Valley. And then I'd have my Hollywood friends. And my Hollywood friends were starting to get caught up in drugs and alcohol abuse and sexual promiscuity. And things that happen in Hollywood, which
Yeah.
unfortunately a lot of people don't realize. But, when you're pulled into that stuff at a young age, you're kind of, you grow up fast, and you're exposed to things that maybe other young people aren't exposed to as much. And so I was fighting these things. I didn't realize it was a spiritual battle at the time,
Right.
but I knew there was a tug on my life. And so I started seeing in the clubs. I was in the clubs at like 16, these underground parties and these, raves and things like that. They call them club kids. And so, there was a list of drugs and just all different types of things that were being passed around. And so it was a lot for a 17-year-old, 18-year-old. And, and so this was my life up until about 2021. And then this is when I just started realizing, like, there's got to be more to life. I would see the emptiness in these people. And sometimes when I was under the influence of alcohol or drugs, I would even feel something spiritual. I knew it was demonic, and so I started doing all this. And at the time I met this pastor, and he was probably making like 40 grand a year. He had several kids. I mean, very humble man, and here I am like hanging out with these celebrity people, probably making millions a year. And yet his life, he had joy.
Yeah.
He had peace.
The fruit of the Spirit.
And then I'm sitting here like, and I have to kind of, make it a little bit shorter because there's so many stories I could tell you. But I was sitting next to this international celebrity that at the time everybody had posters on their wall. Remember back then, I'm kind of dating myself. And so, her poster was on like everybody's wall, just hint at that. And, I'm sitting next to her in a party and, we're on drugs and alcohol. And, I'm looking at her and I'm just like, everybody thinks this is success. She's totally broken.
Yeah.
She's miserable, she's controlled. And then I'm looking at this pastor, I'm like, he's got joy. I want that.
Yeah.
I want what he has. So I started being mentored by this man. And I just want to say to everybody, mentorship and discipleship is so big. Meeting with a young person, having coffee with them and just, discipling them. This is what's lacking in a lot of the church right now. And I really think that, this is where we need to go again because this is so important,
The one-on-one time.
One-on-one time, accountability, and he would just share with me, like, Todd, why are you doing this? Let me share with you what the Bible says, and I just knew it was like authentic, it was real, it was love.
Truth.
So I started disengaging from that lifestyle, and then I saw more spiritual warfare, and so when I had eventually really dedicated my life, like you mentioned in Hawaii at this, my parents had invited me to a pastor's conference. They said, free trip to Hawaii, all you got to do is come. I'm living with my girlfriend at the time, living a very lavish lifestyle, nice car, nice condo, cameras, the whole thing, Hollywood, you know. And they said, just come out. And so I went out there by myself and I said, okay, they said, all you need to do is go to one meeting. If you go to this one meeting, the rest of the time you can hang on the beach, So, okay, I go to this meeting and the Spirit of the living God just, it was like so thick. And so I walk out in the Descanso garden and, I'm like, what is going on? I start weeping and I get on my face. And at that moment, I gave my heart to the Lord. Okay. So then, the rest of the trip, I went to every meeting. Instead of not going to any meetings, I went to all of them. I wanted more of this. I was engaging with pastors and they were pouring into me and praying with me. And on that trip, I reconciled with my dad because he was also in a transitional stage in his life and his faith journey. And later he would become, in the ministry with my mom. So, so much happened on that trip. I get home, I tell my girlfriend, like, I got saved in Hawaii. She's like, what does that mean? I'm like, it means, well, first of all, I don't think we could live together anymore, and I think she just thought it was like a momentary phase.
Yeah.
And, she was a good girl, nothing wrong with her, but, it just wasn't the one for me. And so we ended up parting ways. And I moved home with my parents. I started making like basically minimum wage compared to all this money I was making in Hollywood. Total lifestyle change, total. And so 2 years of that, and I will say this, and I have a lot of understanding of people that come out of the world and get plugged into church. And it's like you're in this like weird mushy middle where you don't have Christian friends and your roll dogs and people that you've always hung with are in the world. But if you go hang around them, you're going to get pulled back into it because you're not strong enough yet. So what happened was about 2 years into serving the Lord, I was in that and I missed my friends. Yeah. And so I go.
It's lonely.
It's lonely.
It's a lonely season.
Yes, it was hard. I would go to church. The only people that would talk to me were like the greeters. Thank God for the greeters.
Yes, thank God for the greeters. I was a greeter because I wanted to hug people because I didn't get hugged like you.
Such an important ministry,
Right.
And so, I would literally stand there and I'd be like, let's see if anybody talks to me. No one would come up.
Or invite me to lunch.
Right.
Or invite me to a small group or something.
Yes.
You're not part of the world, but then you're not part of the church.
Yes.
We have to do better.
We have to do better in that area.